Welcome to the Soft Revolution. My name's Leo Kalian, and the idea this show is exploring is what softness looks like when it becomes a strategy instead of the apology. Today's episode 6. There's a man on a podium. Doesn't matter which country, doesn't matter which year either, pick one. The economy's gone sideways, rent's eating people alive. The hospitals are full and the wages are flat, and everybody in the crowd can feel that something has been quietly taken from them, even if they can't tell you what. And this man, who's had his hands on the actual levers of power for years, steps up to the microphone with a solution. He points. Not up, never up. He points at the smallest person in the room. The newest arrival, the one with the funny name and the wrong passport and the very least power to point back. And he says, them. That's where it went. That's why. And the crowd exhales. Because being handed someone to blame feels almost exactly like being handed an answer. It isn't one, but in the body, in the moment, the two are very hard to tell apart. And the bit nobody wants to admit is that this works on kind people, decent people, people who'd never raise a hand to anyone. It arrives as relief, not as hate. Someone finally naming why everything got so heavy and pointing somewhere you can actually reach. Because being angry at the real cause is exhausting and it's hopeless and it never once looks you in the eye. Being angry at a stranger is easy and it scratches the itch. The whole horror of the trick is that from the inside, it feels like clarity. And it isn't only men on podiums. The uncle at the dinner table runs the same move. The one who's found a single group to blame for a life that didn't go the way he wanted. So does the comment section that knows instantly exactly whose fault everything is. It scales all the way down. The same shape on a national broadcast and in a family group chat. Once you've seen it, you can't stop clocking it at every size. It is so old, so reliable, so deep in the muscle memory of power that I want to spend the next while taking it apart in slow motion. Because a thing you've watched in slow motion can never quite fool you again at full speed. I know what a room sounds like right before it turns. You feel it from a stage before you ever hear it. The air goes tight. A crowd pulls one breath in together, and you learn fast that the next thing that happens depends entirely on where you send their attention. A performer figures this out in self-defense. So does a demagogue. Same instrument, opposite intentions. The room will look wherever you tell it to look, and while it's looking, you can do almost anything at all with the other hand. Now, the first episode of the show was about appetite, about empire as a business model, about being called too much by the same people who crossed oceans for your flavor and then sent you the bill for the trip. I'm not walking back through that door, but I want to add one thing I left out of it. An appetite that size cannot eat in the open. It needs the room looking somewhere else. It needs a smaller hand to point with. So let's talk about the pointing. And let's start with the cleanest version of it I know. Berlin, February 1933. The Parliament building catches fire. A young Dutch communist is found at the scene, and before the ash is even cold, the loud hand goes up. Communists, terror, emergency, they're coming for you. The very next day, a decree gets signed. It suspends free speech, free press, the right to gather, the right to privacy. Police can now arrest anyone, hold them with no charge, no judge, no reason given. Historians still argue about who actually lit the match, and it barely matters either way, because while the whole country is watching the fire, watch the quiet hand. Within weeks, the opposition is in cells. The newspapers belong to the state, and a party that couldn't win an honest majority never has to fight an honest election again. One fire, and a country handed over its entire spine in a single sleepless night, convinced the whole time that it was being kept safe, and they didn't even need to light it themselves. That's the quiet genius of the move. You don't have to manufacture the crisis, you just have to be standing there with a name ready the second it arrives. Sit with the shape of that. Because the shape is the entire thing. A crisis arrives, and the people who caused it, or who simply can't fix it, don't stand up and say, "We got this wrong." They reach down and find you somebody to be afraid of. Fear is a beautiful currency to them because it spends instantly and it never asks for change. A frightened person doesn't audit the accounts. A frightened person wants a wall, a law, a name to spit. And that is the exact mood you'd want a crowd in if you were quietly planning to leave with the silverware. And fear has one more quality they love. it travels. You can hand it to 1 million people at once and it arrives intact, ready to use. Anger at the actual cause is slow. It needs facts. It needs a target with an address. Fear of a stranger needs nothing but a face and a feeling. So the people with the most to hide have spent centuries getting very, very good at manufacturing the second one and making sure the first one never quite shows up. And it happens again and again. A new enemy every few years wearing a different face and the same warning label. Fear has a rhythm to it once you start listening. It's a loop, 4 bars, and here it comes round again. The real move in a song hides in the key change 2 bars before the loud part, the one you feel land in your chest half a second before your head works out why. Misdirection works on the same fuel. You've already reacted before you've understood. Let's go back a few centuries and watch the loop in an older costume. Across Europe, the weather turns, genuinely turns. Winters stretch longer, crops fail, the bread doesn't come, plague moves through the towns like weather of its own. People are cold and hungry and frightened, and they want to know whose fault this is. And the men in charge, the church, the local lords, the courts, cannot stand up and admit they don't control the sky, so they go looking for someone who can be made to carry the blame for it. And the someone they choose is almost never random. It's a woman, usually older, usually poor, often a widow with no husband to speak for her and no grown son to make her dangerous to touch. Sometimes she knows which herbs brought a fever down. Sometimes she was just sharp with her tongue and easy to resent. Always, and this is the part that matters, she had almost nothing, which made her almost free to destroy. The historian Bran Levac has spent a career counting these cases as carefully as the broken records allow. He lands on somewhere between 40 and 60,000 people executed across roughly 3 centuries of trials. The clear majority of them were women, burned, hanged, drowned, for a failed harvest, for milk that soured, for a baby that died the way babies died constantly in that century. So the crop failed and somebody had to carry it, and the one made to carry it was the one who could carry the least. And once a hunt like that catches, it feeds itself. Because the way you proved someone was a witch was to torture them until they confessed, and a person on the rack will say anything. They'll name names, neighbors, rivals, whoever the questioner gently steers them toward. Each confession becomes evidence for the next arrest. And at some point, the fear stops being about witches at all and becomes about being accused. Which means everyone in that village now has a reason to point at someone else, loudly, before the finger can find them. That's the cruelest gear in the whole machine. It doesn't just choose a victim. It turns a frightened village into a room full of informers, all pointing down and sideways, none of them looking up at the men who lit the fire. And it was never only women, never only witches. Go back to the same era of the plague, Black Death, a third of Europe gone in a few years, and watch what frightened people did with all that terror. A rumor spread that Jewish families were poisoning the wells. It wasn't true. Even the Pope said out loud and in writing that it was a lie. They did it anyway. In Strasbourg, in February 1349, around 2,000 Jewish people were burned to death in a matter of days. The plague hadn't even reached the town yet. They killed the blame before the disaster they were blaming them for had arrived. And a chronicler wrote down the quiet detail underneath all the horror. The town cancelled every debt it owed the people it had just killed and shared their money out among the living. The loud hand pointed at the well. The quiet hand wiped the ledger clean. And notice the words. Because across every version of this, the words go the same way. The chosen face stops being described as a person and becomes a tide, a swarm, a flood, an infestation, vermin. Because you can't quite ask a crowd to be cruel to a person. They'll hesitate. They'll see a face. But a flood? A flood you're allowed to want gone. The language does the quiet work of making someone killable before a single hand is raised. Now, I want to bring this home to the version of the trick I know in my own body. The one that gets shouted on a British street and typed underneath my videos. It goes like this. Where are you really from? Asks the person whose country spent centuries in everyone else's. Well, here's 2 of them. Bristol, a statue of Edward Colston stood for 125 years because he was a senior official at the Royal African Company, and between 1680 and 1692, it shipped more than 84,000 African people across the Atlantic. 19,000 died on the way. The ones who lived had the company's initials burned onto their chest. Children too. London. Robert Clive, East India Company. The company he built kept shipping Bengal's grain out to sell even as the crops failed and the people who grew it starved. 10 million of them, a third of everyone there. Clive sailed home one of the richest men in Britain. They made him a lord and built him a statue near Parliament. But both did the same thing after. They gave a little bit back. Schools, homes for the poor. And they got called good men for it. Rob a continent, tip the town, and they'll carve you in stone and call it heritage. In 2020, a crowd pulled Colston's statue down and rolled it into the harbour, and people shouted, "You can't erase history!" But the statue was never the history. It was the edit. It kept the gifts and buried the bodies. Clive's still up, by the way. So next time someone asks where you're really from, don't hand them 300 years. Just stand there. They carved men into heroes to feel taller than the people they robbed. And you're still here. The one part of the story their statues couldn't edit out. The one they don't get to pull down. Just some food for thought. That's the trick wearing history, but it works just as well dressed as economics, as a shortage, as a number, as the simple sentence, "there isn't enough." And the moment you hear that sentence, you should start counting the exits. They told you the immigrant ate your dinner, but a third of that dinner went in the bin before you even sat down. Bread, milk, bags of salad nobody opened. So when there's not enough to go round, nobody points at how much food is wasted by supermarkets. They point at the immigrant with one suitcase, because it's much easier to check his pockets than to ask who walked off with the rest. And it's an old trick, much older than you'd think. 1847, Ireland is starving. People are dying in the streets. And that same year, almost 4,000 ships sailed away from Ireland, full of food. Butter, grain, cows, fish, all of it going to England, leaving Ireland with nothing to eat. And British soldiers with guns made sure that food left. 400,000 people died, not because there was no food. The food was right there. It was just leaving, past the people dying for it. So when they tell you there isn't enough, remember there is enough. There's always enough. It just keeps going out of a door they don't want you looking at. They keep you watching the front door so you never see what's leaving out the back. The man with one suitcase didn't take the food, or waste the food. He showed up just in time to take the blame. Just some food for thought. Pun intended. Now, let me argue with myself for a minute, because if I don't, someone sharper than me will, and they'd be half right. Because sometimes the room genuinely is cold. That's the bit the lazy version of this argument skips straight over. Rent is real. The wait for a doctor that stretches into months is real. Wages that haven't moved in 15 years while everything else doubled. Completely real. Nobody listening to this is being gaslit about whether life got harder. It did. The hardship was never the trick. The trick is the finger. And I want to be fair to the frightened person, because frightened is not the same as cruel. A town really can have one doctor and a 3-week wait. A school really can be stretched past what it can hold. Someone who's never once been given the chance to know the person they've been taught to fear isn't a monster. They're a target too, just a quieter kind. The man pointing the finger and the person it lands on are very often standing in the same cold room, robbed by the same hand, each told the other one did it. And that's the part that should make you furious. Not at your neighbour, at whoever profits from keeping the two of you at each other's throats. And if you want to see that machine with its mask off, with its budget lines and its actual paperwork, here's the most honest version of it I know. They come over here and take our jobs. Okay, so let's look at who Britain actually caught when it went after immigrants. Because in 2012, the government rolled out a plan to make life so miserable that they'd give up and leave on their own. They gave it a name, the hostile environment. That was the real name on the actual paperwork. And it was meant for people here illegally, but the net was so wide and so careless that it caught people who'd been British for half a century. The new rule said, prove you belong here, show us the papers. And the people who couldn't came from the Caribbean as kids, invited because Britain needed workers to rebuild after the war. They worked every day, paid every tax, built this place. They're called the Windrush generation. The only proof they belonged was the old landing papers from when they first arrived, and years earlier the government had already destroyed those itself. Then it built a system that demanded them back. They lost everything. Their jobs, their homes, the right to see a doctor, the right to stay in the country. Every time someone shouts about immigrants, somebody quietly gets paid. The places they lock people up, run by private companies. The more people they lock in, the more money they make. And the politicians who promise to get tough, they get voted back in. So next time someone points at the dangerous foreigner, look closely at who they're actually pointing at. They pick whoever is easiest to blame. And if that face looks like yours, they pointed at you to rob the room. But you're the reason the room's still standing. Just some food for thought. So why does the finger always swing towards the person with less and never toward the person with more? Because down is the only direction that's free. Point up at the landlord, the company, the people who actually drew the floor plan, and it costs you. They have lawyers. They have the paperwork. They have the ear of the same man on the podium. But point down at someone with no power and no platform and no way to make you pay for it, and you get all the release of blame with none of the bill. An entire frightened nation can be aimed at a few thousand exhausted people in a queue, and the powerful lose nothing at all. It's always been the lowest risk move power can make. And while everyone is busy looking down, nobody's doing the one sum that actually matters. Here's a number that breaks most brains. 1,000,000 seconds is about 11 days. 1,000,000,000 seconds is about 32 years. Same little word, near enough, one soft syllable between them. But one is a fortnight and the other is most of your life. That's the gap they hide inside a single extra letter. The people you're handed to be scared of and the people who quietly run the place do not live on the same scale. They barely live in the same arithmetic. And here's what the trick costs the people who fall for it. The ones doing the pointing, not just the one pointed at, because blame feels like getting something. It feels like justice arriving. But it's the counterfeit of justice, slipped into your hand so you'll stop demanding the real thing. The rent doesn't drop because you resented the family down the road. The ward doesn't reopen because you were sharp with the nurse who came from somewhere else. You get the feeling of redress, and not 1 gram of the redress itself. You were robbed once by the people who emptied the room, and a second time by the story that told you who to blame for it. The scapegoat pays in blood. The crowd pays in everything it was actually owed, and never even notices the bill. It teaches you to police the small thing, your own body, your own softness, the person sitting 2 seats down, so you never once lift your eyes to the large thing. Keep them watching each other. Keep them watching themselves, and you can run any kind of extraction you like in the silence that makes. A frightened, divided, self-auditing crowd is the easiest crowd on the planet to pick the pockets of. So the soft revolution, the real one, underneath all of it, might come down to a single move. The refusal to look where they point. There's a song that lives in exactly this spot, and I'll only say this much about it. It's the sound of a person who's finished performing the role they were handed. The intruder, the burden, the one who's meant to be grateful and quiet and ideally just leave. It's somebody putting their feet down in the one place that was always theirs and saying plainly, "This is where I belong." No comeback, no permission asked for, just a body declining to be the thing you point at. Because the loop only works on you while you can't see it. The moment you clock the rhythm, the moment you hear those 4 bars come round again with a fresh name stapled on the front, it loses its grip. Nobody gets startled by a magic trick they've already watched in slow motion. And that's the only protection there's ever really been. Keeping your eyes on the quiet hand while the whole room watches the loud one. The next time the news catches fire, and it will, right on schedule, with a brand new enemy in the same old script, don't watch the loud hand, watch the quiet one. Ask who profits from your fear, and follow that money upward toward the rooms you were never told to look at, and ask the oldest question there is, the one this whole show's been circling from the very start. Who benefits from the box they keep trying to put you in? And if the finger swings round and lands on you, if you're the one they've decided the room should be afraid of, then plant your feet. You are not the smoke. You are not the reason the building's gone cold. You are the home they are still standing inside of, telling you to leave. Stay exactly where you are. I hope that makes the song sound different. a sudden some people say we should go home. The news is on fire with lie after lie about not having enough of their own. Do what you want, you can scream, you can shout, honey, this is the place I was born. Took what you need in my kingdom defeated, now this is the place I belong. Oh. Once upon a time my town was the jeweler, miss your crown. You tore it up, you broke it down. Flags red, white, blue, my skin is brown. No home to go to but this tragic kingdom of mine. Don't need reminding, nowhere is home but this magical kingdom of mine. I go down fighting fences and borders in this tragic kingdom of mine. Don't need reminding, lost sons and daughters in this magic kingdom of mine. I go down fighting. What would you go through if you were walking in my shoes? You lose. What would you do? What would you do? What would you do? What would you do? Somehow in this no man's land, I can't understand why my dreams won't stand up. Castles in the sand, it's so far away. Grandeur in decay, the whole world you conquered and then threw away. No home to go to but this tragic kingdom of mine. Don't need reminding, nowhere is home but this magical kingdom of mine. I go down fighting fences and borders in this tragic kingdom of mine. Don't need reminding, lost sons and daughters in this magic kingdom of mine. I go down fighting.